Welcome to Dead Giveaway, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of playing giving. I'm your host, Matt Treadwell. Join me as I sit down with inspiring professionals who are shaping legacies and making a lasting impact, one gift at a time. Let's dig in. A quick note before we dive in. I met with Brantley at the end of 2024, which means that any discussion about AI and where it is now may be a bit outdated at this point. With that, let's dig in.
My name is Brantley Boyett, and I am the president at a company called Giving Ducks.
How did you get into philanthropy?
Yeah, so my kind of a roundabout way, my background is I'm a reformed attorney. So I went to the University of Texas for my undergraduate degree and also law school. And I practiced law in Austin, Texas for about 11 years. And way back in 2014, I was doing a lot of litigation. I'd done lots of things, family law, real estate, business litigation, and of course, some estate planning work. And in 2014, I had started to do work with startups around Austin. And I found it to be really fun and very different than litigation. And I wanted to do more of it. And I ended up signing up for a Google startup weekend, not knowing what it was, but figuring that there would be some startups there and I could meet them. And I went to the event where I quickly learned that there are no actual real startups at a startup weekend. That is a place where people go to pitch their ideas for startups and be judged on them. So I tried to leave pretty quickly because I got sat in the developer section, didn't understand a word they were saying. And someone caught me and they said, no, you have to do a pitch. And I told them my idea, which was about cars being wrapped in advertising. And they told me it was the worst idea that they'd ever heard. And they asked me what I did in my day-to-day work as a lawyer that wasn't adding a lot of value. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I just had a guy come in last week. He was 33. He was successful entrepreneur, had a couple $1 million, had a feeling that he might die, and he wanted me to do his will. And
Wait, he had a feeling that he might die.
He said, I don't know. I'm living kind of fast and loose, and can you do my will for me? And I was like, sure. So my firm charged $2,500 to open that file, and it just wasn't that complicated. He wasn't married. He didn't have kids, and he knew who he wanted to give to his family and charity and all that. And I felt bad about it because I felt like it was more than we should be charging him for that kind of simple deal. And I told this to the person who was making me do a pitch, and they said, that's great. That's what you do. You give away wills on the internet. Go pitch it. So I got up and I pitched, and 75 people pitched, and I got third, and I was very proud of myself and talked to everyone for a little while, tried to leave. And the same guy was like, wait, where are you going? And I said, I was going to leave. And he said, it's startup weekend, startup Friday night. You need a team. You're going to work on a real pitch deck. You're going to pitch to 7 CEOs on Sunday night. And I was like, oh no. So cobbled together a team, did the whole thing. It was so fun. It was like the funnest weekend of my life. I really enjoyed the whole process of it. On Sunday night, 18 teams pitched to the 7 CEOs, 10 minutes. I mean, the whole thing took like 5 hours, and they got first place. And super proud of myself. Went out with all the techies for the night. I went home, went to bed, woke up and went to the law firm. And I got a call about 5 p.m. and it was the same guy saying, no, you're really supposed to do it. This is where people take their dreams and you switch to other people's dreams. So you should probably do it. And I said, will you do it with me? He said, sure, I have another business, but I'll help you and we can be co-founders. And the third person, our other co-founder, was on the team. So that's Robert Geis and Gavin Gillis. And we started working on it in January of 2015. And a couple months in, I started to get disillusioned with the whole idea of giving away estate planning online in order to somehow monetize that. The original pitch was essentially like free credit report. We would give stuff away and then get information and sell people stuff. And the more I looked into that, the more I was like, this is it. We're just kind of going to be selling people stuff or selling their information. And I was hanging out with a buddy one day and he was like, oh, I have to show you something, because I'd been telling him about what we were working on. He's like, I just got a letter from the University of Texas, and they want me to put them in my will. And I was like, oh, that's what this could be. And it was
Okay.
actually a letter from the Stelter company, and started doing a deep dive and researching, and found Russell James, and it found that there was this like $40 billion industry that's kind of quiet and most people don't know about it. Right.
Yeah.
And we just started talking to everyone. We went to every development person we could find in Austin, small and large shops, and said, hey, we're thinking about doing this. We're thinking about like giving people free estate planning, but really pushing legacy giving. We see that there's this kind of gap, right?
Mhm.
So there's marketing companies and they tell people to do it. There's plan gift officers, but they have a 3 to 5 year sales cycle. It costs $8,000 to $10,000. Like, what if we could just cut it out and go straight to getting the will done today? And everybody thought it was a great idea until we'd get in front of a board, which would always have an attorney. And they would tell us that, well, tell me specifically that I was going to get his part and we were all going to get sued, and the lawyers they worked with would never talk to them again. So I knew that the first part wasn't true because, you know, as soon as we got serious about the legacy giving side of things, I went to the state bar and I was like, hey, I want to do this. And they explained to me it was fine. They'd been fighting LegalZoom for 15 years. They were over it. They wanted more people to have more access to estate plans, and go for it. Good luck, kid. Patted me on the back.
They've been fighting LegalZoom for 15 years, so they're just done with it.
They were done. They had lost it. All the state bars across the country. North Carolina was the last one to settle, I think in 2015. And they were just done. It became kind of known that you could do legal form builders. You still can't give legal advice. But yeah, that was challenging back in the early days because no one was doing this and it was new. And
so about what year was this?
this was like all of 2015 and 2016. And in 2017, we got close to, you know, there was a point where we just heard so many no's.
Yeah.
That I was like, what are we doing here? Is this really are we going to be able to break through? And a couple of things happened kind of like simultaneously. One was that I got a call from Gavin, my co-founder, and said, hey, we got into this program at Duke with Dan Ariely. Do you know who Dan Ariely is? And I said, yeah, he's a behavioral economist. We were both econ majors. Like, of course I know who he is. And I said, how'd we get into that? And he said, oh, I applied and didn't tell you, which is something he does often. So I was like, that's really cool. And then we did get kind of a Austin nonprofit with a pretty good donor base to agree to actually launch a campaign for the first time simultaneously. And it was at that point, and I started looking at this program. It was really cool. It was called the Startup Lab at the Center for Advanced Hindsight at Duke University. And they would pick 3 companies a year to be immersed in the lab with the scientists for 9 months. And it was such an amazing program that I decided whether or not the business was going to be a success or viable, it was more risky not to go than it was to stay in my job.
Were you still practicing as an attorney?
I was practicing this whole time. I was like a full-time practicing attorney. So yeah, that was, you know, August of 2017, I told my law partners that I was going to hand them all my business and go to Duke University and run a company. And they looked at me like I was speaking German. They don't know German. Yeah, we did it. We launched that campaign. It was super successful. And I went from being a lawyer on a Friday to a behavioral scientist on a Monday, and really got immersed in the lab, and we studied all kinds of cool behavioral science things. So the Center for Advanced Hindsight, their mission is to make the world happier, healthier, and wealthier. They do that by designing, implementing, and testing behavioral science interventions to help people make better decisions in regards to their overall happiness, their financial wellness, their physical health. All of that is a long-winded way of saying they try to trick people into doing things that are good for them. We learned about nudges and, all the different kind of behavioral science tools that marketing companies use to try to get people to do stuff, which was super useful for us because we know that it's difficult to get people to create an estate plan. So it's really interesting. I was thinking on the way over here this morning, I love the name of this podcast. It's called Dead Giveaway. And as soon as I saw it on my calendar, I was like, dang, I wish I thought of that. It's so clever. Who came up with that?
Craig Ruck came up with the name.
Craig Ruck, genius.
Yeah.
So one of the scientists, I think this is relevant because one of the scientists at the lab nicknames our company Death Wish.
Death Wish? Isn't that a movie?
It is, yeah. Charles Bronson, I think. But we had signage made and everything, and it went above my desk at the science lab, the Death Wish. And we even considered like spinning up a whole art student website, and we tested it, thinking it might be campy and fun. It didn't play well with the normal crowd. It went over great with bikers and emo people.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. And then, kind of from there, we just made sense and we started to get some traction. But that was really it. I think, getting into that program at Duke was kind of how we got our start.
Okay. Because you just had to say, everything I'm doing at this point, I need to stop and focus on this, or is it the program itself, or a little bit of all that?
Yeah, I knew that if I was going to do it, I needed to go all in. I would have to move across the country, leave behind my friends and my life, and really commit to this. And that's what I did.
Yeah, that's got to be terrifying.
It was kind of terrifying, but I knew immediately when I got there that it was the right decision.
Immediately.
I just right away, the first day in the science lab, I was like, this is so cool. I can't imagine not having done this.
Yeah. And so was how many founders were there again? 3?
Yeah, there were the 3 of us. And
were you all at Duke at the same time?
No, just me.
Just you?
Yeah.
So
they came to visit.
Your co-founders signed you up for this.
Well, they both have children in Texas. They couldn't just move for 9 months.
So he had kids, signed you up for the application process, and then was like, you're going to go do this.
Pretty much, yeah. Because I thought it would be him for sure. And then, for family reasons, he couldn't move at the time. And so if I didn't do it, it wasn't going to happen.
Okay. So the process, you get to work on this nonstop. So I'm guessing you build in mentors and stuff as well, right?
Yeah, for sure. The lab had it came with a group of mentors. It was essentially an accelerator, just a funny one. It wasn't focused on fundraising or venture capitalism. It was really focused on how do we make this product work? So how do we remove friction in the product? So there was some scientists who were devoted to showing us how to make our website easier to use and get people over the finish line, essentially, in regards to estate planning, which is tricky. And then there were people who were focused on how do we message. So we actually had Dr. James fly out to Durham to work on this big study with us, and got all the scientists in the room with him and one of his friends from across the pond. And yeah, that week I was like, wow, we're doing something interesting here. It was fun.
So how did you go from Death Wish to Giving Docs?
Well, we were Giving Docs before. So we did a branding exercise in 2015 because we were using another name, but we couldn't use it anymore. So Giving Doc, we kind of studied this and we're like, look, we want to be about giving. We don't want to be about get your free stuff online. And we really want to focus on the legacy component. It turns out as we studied it, that really helps in getting people to do it. If you're reframing it from not being about death to being about giving or creating a legacy is super helpful in getting people to start even. So yeah, there was a moment where we thought about switching it all to Death Wish though.
Could have been a fun name. Harder one to probably pitch to boards and stuff. We're going to use Death Wish for this.
Yeah, I don't think some of our partners today would like it.
Going back to the topic of mentors outside of the incubator, did you find other mentors? And if so, how did you make that connection?
Yeah, I did. Duke has this robust network around it, and they're really trying to encourage innovation and entrepreneurship. They have a whole building devoted to that. And so I found a few people in and around Duke who were super helpful. One is Erica Buell, who ran the entrepreneurship track at the law school. So you can get your JD and your LLM at the same time at Duke Law. And so that she had an LLM cohort that was focused on this. And she was super helpful in kind of connecting me with other people there, and really a big advocate for what we were doing. And it's always nice to have attorney advocates. Eric and I actually co-taught a course for a couple of years on entrepreneurship in the law. I still have the title of visiting legal fellow or something. So I had her. Rob Halford was super helpful at Duke. On the legal side, we had a lady named Rhonda Brink in Austin, and she was one of the people that did a lot of gift planning for the University of Texas. So she papered over $1 billion in gifts specifically for the University of Texas through estate gifts. And she was one of those people that told me I was going to get this part and we were all going to get sued. And about a year later, she called me up and she said, "Hey, I know you've been getting it from attorneys, and I was one of them, and I just want you to know I was wrong.
Oh, wow.
I think more people should have access to estate planning. I'm not going to be around forever. I need to think about what my legacy is to this industry, and it should be helping people like you get more people estate planning."
Oh, wow.
So,
did you have a lot of attorneys that ended up kind of doing that, or was it one of one?
usually, if you talk to them for a while and you really kind of explain what you're doing and why and the reasons for it and all the things that you're doing to try to make sure that nobody gets in trouble, and then they'll usually come around and see it as something positive. I do actually think we get more, I think the initial reaction from attorneys, is to be protective. So they want to be protective of their clients and protective of these people who aren't their clients and make sure that everything's squared away. But also that, they get paid for this work, right? And it's something that we're giving away. So I think, honestly, by getting more people even engaged with estate planning, we're getting attorneys more work in the long run. So I think that they'll usually start to see that if their issue is the money part, and they'll also usually concede that it's better to have any will at all than to not have one, even if that one that they have isn't necessarily perfect for everything that the person needs.
So I know one of the big things that Giving Docs has been a part of is like DEI initiatives and making access to estate planning more accessible for people. And you just mentioned that with the conversation you had with the one attorney. So how did that become kind of a focus, or is that always part of the focus?
That came about because of Jade Bristol. So Jade Bristol was working at Human Rights Campaign and became a partner of Giving Docs. And they were the first organization that came to us and said, "Hey, we want this. This is super cool. We're less interested in the legacy giving component of it and more interested in providing access to our community, which we feel is legally underserved." And she was very successful with her original campaign, and they continued to find success, but their success was on a different metric than everyone else's because it was really about getting these tools in the hands of the people they were trying to serve. So from that, we saw how positive that was, and we started to lean into that concept. And she did a ton of research and gives lots of talks on this subject. And I think it's been really good to have her voice in the industry.
So as you look at Giving Docs, what do you see as the future? I know you're doing a lot with AI. At conference, you're doing a pre-session on AI. So is that kind of what you see, or is there other things that you see? What do you see as the future?
I think, of course, AI is like a part of what we do now, and we haven't productized it. So Giving Docs doesn't have like a product chat that we send out and share with anyone. We have an internal one. It's named Daisy with a capital A.
Okay.
So yeah, we use that all the time for different things internally. I think, in terms of like AI and estate planning, there's a couple companies that are starting to dip their toe. I think it's super dangerous because we'll come back around to, is that robot giving legal advice, right? If it's a chat bot that's creating a will, where's the line there? And that's very touchy. And I don't think no one wants to go first, right? Because then the state bars have to start filing lawsuits. So I think that we're already seeing, some companies make it more conversational through AI. And I think there's definitely safeguards that you can put in there. So I think, online estate planning is going to change. I think the really interesting thing that I think is coming, if it's not completely there yet, is online notarization and witnesses. So we partnered with a company called Proof this year, and everyone's kind of tiptoeing into the space yet. We're not live doing it, and there's only 4 states where it's legal at the moment. But I think in the next couple of years, we'll see, I think by next year, it could be 15 states. I think they'll all get in line within the next probably 5 years. And I think that's kind of since we started, that's something that I've always wanted. I wanted to just say, hey, look, I want someone to do their will right now, have it all done online, and have a document that they can use that's legit, because that's kind of the gap that we leave open. We have to give people instructions and tell them how to do it. And there's good reasons why we have witnesses for these type of documents, because they're very serious and we have lots of assets. But I think that it can be done safely online, and there's a lot of work being done to get that done right now.
Has just something I'm kind of curious about as I monitor online wills and all that space. Have any of them that you're aware of come under challenges? Any that maybe you guys have worked on?
We've never had a challenge.
Okay.
I certainly hear stories about other platforms. LegalZoom's been around a long time. I'm sure they've seen a lot of these things, right? And I haven't heard of any specifically in our space, but one of our earliest partners looked into this issue pretty seriously, because they wanted to know, if they used us, would they be involved in more litigation? And nonprofits always risk being involved in litigation when they end up in someone's estate plan. And so this nonprofit hired an outside law firm to have them kind of review this issue. And what they found was that they were not more likely to end up in a lawsuit because they were partnered with us, except that they might have more gifts, and therefore the exposure was proportional to the number of more gifts, but not because of us, just that we were bringing in more volume, which meant they're more likely to have a lawsuit from that.
That's a good problem to have, right?
It should be. I think nonprofits can always disclaim gifts, and it doesn't cost very much. So I don't think, fear of litigation should be a reason to not try to close plain gifts.
As you think about your success throughout your career, how have you been able to define success, and how has your definition of success evolved over time?
So I think about, I'm going to flip this question on you and put it a different way. So the way that I prioritize things in my life is, it starts with the nonprofit partners that we serve. So if they're doing well and they're happy, they're delighted partners, then that is what success is to me.
Okay.
Below them, next in line, most important, is my employees. Are my employees happy? Do we have a good culture? Does everyone feel like they're growing? Then come our partners. So the companies that we work with, other people in our space, people that we do thought leadership stuff with, things like the podcast, like, are those people delighted? Are they happy? And then after that, I think about my own success, because if all those things are properly aligned, then I've succeeded.
Okay. I like that. It's when you think about it from like the work we do, and we always talk about donor centric, you're thinking about everyone else and how they're succeeding and happy, and that kind of filters down to you. And it's very philanthropy type idea, and look at that. So that's fun. I like that. If you could go back and give your younger self like one piece of advice, what would it be?
Whatever it is, the younger me probably would have listened.
I think, yeah, I guess that is
just have more fun, take more chances. Like just doing what I do now, I took a big swing, and it hasn't always been fun, but I try to bring fun to it every day that I can.
That's good. Who do you turn to if you are looking for guidance? Because now you're running your company, you've gone through the incubator and all that, and it sounded like early on someone was like, you really need to focus on this. You really need to focus on this. So now who do you go to when you need more guidance or inspiration?
Remember that guy that I did the will for? $2,500 will? He's now much more successful and would not get by with a $2,500 will. And he's also now one of my best friends. He's started many companies. So whenever I have a serious question, I go back to that gentleman, and he's extremely helpful because he's just seen it all.
Yeah, that's cool. Sometimes it's crazy how that works, right? Like a client or a donor can become like a best friend type person.
Yeah. A lot of the people involved early on with Giving Docs were actual clients that I served as an attorney.
So real quick, and I know this is completely out of order, I want to go back to something you said near the very beginning. You pitched an idea of wrapping cars for advertising, and they said that was a terrible idea.
Yeah, I thought it was such a good idea. There was going to be an algorithm, and we would pay people based on how far they drove to work, and they might get a free car, or they might even get money for driving around with advertising.
The fact that they said no, that's a common thing now, right?
It's a common thing.
So I guess what that leads me to is like, how does your brain work in a way that you've had these two on the spot ideas that are just amazing?
Oh, I have lots of bad ideas, and I'm not sure that these are particularly amazing ideas. I think a lot of bad ideas get started and then get worked into something good.
Okay.
So, most of the big companies that we think of that are like successful startups started as something completely different.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at their original pitch deck. So I think that's kind of what happened here. I had an idea that probably wouldn't have worked, but then once I found the spin on it, not only did it become viable, but it became purposeful, and it became something that I would commit my life to because it would create meaning.
Yeah, I like that. That's creating meaning. So when you think about creating meaning,
I mean, I think about what we're doing creates meaning in people's lives. So that's the really important part. I think that when people create a legacy, we know that they're happier people, they volunteer more, they give more, according to Dr. James. And we also know that people who give make more money than people that don't because they have a reason to create wealth that isn't themselves and their families. So they have more meaning in their lives, and it's causal.
It's great. Thinking about giving docs, it looks like there's a lot of promotion that happens internally. So how do you go about finding the people to bring into the organization to even get? And then it looks like you've created a great opportunity for people to grow within your company.
Yeah, when we started out, a lot of people were just like in the startup community, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is, planned giving is a different language. People that listen to this podcast speak a different language than normal people. So I've really tried to, starting back in 2019, 2020, look for people in the industry who might be good on this side of the aisle, and really intentionally, putting myself out there as like, hey, I would like to maybe have people from the industry come work. So that's Jade, that's Thomas Perkins, Lindsay Newman. We're all working at nonprofits when I met them, and I kind of started to recruit from there. And it's great because, when you have to speak to people that work in nonprofits, it's really helpful if you speak the language of planned giving. And so we've intentionally tried to find that. It's not always easy. There aren't enough people in this industry already. So as you know, it's just a lot of organizations are short-staffed on planned giving, and they have to do searches. And so we have to really look with intention. And we also, have tried to build people up from outside, but it's such a leg up when they already speak the language.
Going back to a question I asked a little bit earlier, thinking about the future of not just Giving Docs now, but like the entire industry, where do you think we are in 5-10 years? Because I'm guessing when you're working on your company, like where do I think the industry is going to be so I can meet them there?
I mean, my hope is that we've gone further in normalizing legacy giving. So that is to say that we've seen planned giving is going up while individual donations are going down, right? Mm-hmm. And I think getting more people to consider legacy gifts across the population will be good for both. And my hope is that this will become more normalized like it is in the UK. So in the UK, 20% of the population leaves a legacy gift. And
really?
Yeah, they have events where people get together and do their wills and to leave money to charity in the will. And it's just...
I need to go to the
UK. Your job might be easier. So it's just kind of standardized. And I'm hopeful that like the work that we're doing and other companies like ours and marketing companies is really, I hope to see this groundswell where it becomes just more normal for people to do this. Like it's not as big of a thing and everyone just does it. That'd be great.
Do you see everyone always talks about millennials and Gen Zs causing issues with these. Do you see any of those actual issues being a thing? Either, granted, none of them are in a place really to have solid legacies in place right now, right? Well,
right.
Some of them do, but not most.
Right. I mean, there's a concern that they have less money and that it's difficult for them to save money because they have less real dollars to spend. But I think overall, we're seeing that they're altruistic and they're interested in giving. So I think that's really a great opportunity for this industry down the road.
So far in your career, what has been the most memorable teaching point, experience, or piece of advice you've ever received?
So I'm wondering if I can say this. Hold on, give me
Okay.
a
No, you're
sec.
good.
Someone who's shall not be named, but is a executive director of Plain Giving at a household name nonprofit, once told me, "Don't ever do anything that's just reactive to what someone else in your space is doing. Do everything you do with intention, and don't just react and copy something because you see it out there." Essentially, he was telling me to keep doing what I had been doing.
Nice. And is that something that you feel like you've been able to really do, or do you find yourselves having to react sometimes?
You do, but you don't want to move too quickly. You really want to like be measured, and that's easier said than done because we work in tech software world where everyone's firing from the hip, and I certainly have to make snap decisions. But that said, when it comes to our platform, we try to really make changes with a lot of intention and really understand all the potential outcomes of what we're doing.
And then my last question for you. So, as you think about this podcast and going forward with it, who is someone that you are on a regular contact basis with that you would want to hear their story and their thoughts on Plain Giving in this industry?
I think a really fun and interesting guest for you would be someone I talk to pretty often, and that's Tracy Malloy Curtis.
Okay.
If you don't know her, she's a riot. She has lots of thoughts on all things Plain Giving, and as I've told her and other friends, they are mostly awesome.
Okay. All right. So I will. Can you help me reach out to her and connect with her?
Absolutely.
Sweet. And that's what we'll do. Thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure talking to you. It's always a pleasure talking to you and just spending time hearing what you have going on and all that.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us on Dead Giveaway, where every gift tells a story. A big thank you to Brantley Boyett for sitting down and talking with me. Join us next month when we sit down with Eileen Heisman, former CEO of National Philanthropic Trust and lecturer at University of Pennsylvania. None of this would be possible without my amazing producer, Jessica Hall, and the support of the entire National Association of Charitable Gift Planners staff. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please share the show and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks again for listening to Dead Giveaway, where generosity lives on.